Hello and welcome to the STCfit podcast. I'll be your host today. My name's Nat Jurek, and with me I'll be joined by Ben Scott and Jason Galea. STCfit are a group of coaches who provide premium coaching and education services to high-achieving women who want to ditch the frustration and achieve the results they want when they want. On the podcast, we'll be discussing all things related to our 5-step method to experiencing total clarity in knowing how to achieve your goals, present and future. The podcast is brought to you by STCfit for all your online and personal training needs. If you enjoyed today's episode, please give us a share and tag at Nat Jurek STCfit, at Ben Scott STC, and at Jason Galea _STC. Hope you enjoy the show. Hello, everyone.
Okay, we're back.
Welcome to this week's episode, and I've subbed Ben out, so we've got Jace with us today.
Party time.
Yeah. I feel like the only reason that Ben and I aren't doing this together today is because we're both 4 days out from competing.
Yeah, I need to hold the ship.
Yeah,
I need to pull this conversation together.
That would be an absolute mess. I think he told you last week we're trying to have a conversation that should have taken like no more than 10 seconds, and we're just going back and forth and Amy's standing there just like,
yeah, I assume everything's tough. I mean, I wonder what would happen if like this conversation falls apart and I'm here though. So,
well, you shouldn't though. You've
like,
just been away for the weekend.
I'm supposed to have my shit together.
You should be rested. You had someone babysitting the children.
Yeah.
So you
Thank
should
you.
have it all together.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, I'm still recovering.
I told you he was hard work. I told you.
I will never forget laying down and just waking up to a sharp stabbing pain like in my stomach. Yeah. I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah, I basically had this like, he weighs 42 kilos.
42 kilos.
For the listeners at home, I have a cyclone of a German Shepherd called Maverick.
Bomb, nuclear
Yeah, so he's like a nuclear bomb with a tornado attached to it. And Nat looked after them while I was away for the weekend. And yeah, he's a little bit of hard work.
Oh my God.
I have this like reflex
kilos.
Where if he moves, I just cover my nuts basically. Yeah, it's like if he leaps, I just cover them because I know that like he's gonna land in that region. So
yeah, I haven't figured out what my
I live in that fear nightly.
Yeah. I don't know what my like what's it called, like defense mechanism is.
Yeah,
like sometimes I turn around, sometimes I'm like,
you can't.
I hold you back.
You can't really mess with it. He's too much. But yeah, so.
Yeah, so what we take away from this conversation is I'm fucked. You're all right.
I remember
and we just hope for the best.
There was a moment when I said to Steph, like when we were away, I'm like, you hear that? And she's like, what? And I said, fucking nothing. I'm like, there's no puffing and panting and barking and jumping and this and that.
Oh my God, yeah.
And I'm like, we need to do this more often.
When I was like, he's kind of all right. Like, I think he's calmed down.
You called that way too soon. I was like, witching hour is just moments away.
And it was.
Yeah.
It well and truly was. So topic for today is lifestyle. So I guess like when a lot of people think about lifestyle, not really looking at it the same way that we're looking at it. And I guess we're sort of looking at it through the lens of how we can maximize results. So if we think about like the problems that a lot of people are coming up against and how this sort of shows up, it's they're not sleeping enough, they're way too stressed, not relaxing enough, and they don't actually know what factors are making up recovery, so they don't know how to manage those things. So typically just sort of like lends to being really burnt out, overwhelmed, and just like contributes to like falling apart, I guess. Like this on and off again cycle. And I always think that this is like a really interesting topic because it's like one of the easiest things to implement, but people are so resistant and hesitant to like changing that shit. Like you try telling someone who falls asleep at like midnight and wakes up at 5 because they've got to go to work that they need to change that, and they're like, no, I'm fine. Like I can function like that. Like I'm all right.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that we take for granted, like sleep, because if we get at some point like the system has to kind of shut down, so we take that for granted that that period in time that we are in bed and we are sleeping, regardless of like how long it is, that like that was enough to kind of fulfill the day. And like I can't remember who I was talking to about it today, but it's like one of our greatest I guess, like features or characteristics as a species is like just our ability to like adapt and put up with shit, and like deal with stress, which we're going to talk about today. So we get used to being in this constant state of like what they call like exhaustion, and we just feel like shit all the time. But we just kind of absorb that, and the new standard is I feel like shit. So that's the new norm, and we don't kind of really know anything different. So we just kind of repeat the cycle, and I guess like habits are hard to break, and especially if people don't see the value in changing those habits. Like it's like where does how I operate outside of the gym sit in alignment with the goals that I want to achieve in the gym? Like people can't really put those pieces together. Like they can't match them up and go, okay, this directly correlates to this. And that's where it's like our job to, get people to kind of see how all of this stuff is multifaceted. Yeah. It's like without fucking putting on my poncho and crossing my legs and singing Kumbaya, it's a holistic approach to, training to maximize results, or it's a holistic approach to getting results.
Yeah. Well, it's like how many hours are you spending in the gym? Maybe 4 to 5, depending on how regular you're training.
Yeah.
What is happening outside of those hours?
Yeah.
It's like even looking at it from that perspective, which is just time and frequency and where you're spending your time. If what we're doing outside of that doesn't reflect what we're doing inside of that, you're going to run into some issues.
Yeah, that's right. Like everyone's too focused on just creating what we call as like the stimulus from training. And we kind of fail to understand the other two kind of key components to getting results and maximizing the time in the gym. So for people at home that like aren't really kind of aware of like what we're trying to do in the gym and what phases or cycles we go through to maximize results, like there's two models that we can really kind of draw back off to explain this. So we've got general adaptive syndrome, which is one model where we look at like how stress kind of imposes itself on our body and how we react to those phases. So we go through like an alarm phase, we go through a resistance phase, and then we have like another phase which is called exhaustion. We then have another model which is called like SRA. So we've got the stimulus, we've got recovery, and then we've got adaptation. There's another phase after that called detraining. Ben and I spoke about that in relation to kind of like programming and stuff in another podcast on our STCfit learning one. But both of those models explain about like, what happens when we get exposed to stimuli that create this like internal shift of the system, whether it's physically or mental. So when we train, that's happening. We're creating this like shift in the maintenance of the system of homeostasis, like that your body wants to stay on like a pretty steady kind of line. It can deal with the environment that's being imposed on it. But when we train, we shift that. It's like, hey, there's an alarm phase, like something's happening here. We have to, lift this weight. It's hard, etc. So then after that, we've created a lot of stress to the system. There's a little bit of muscle damage. There's energy supply that's being depleted. There's perception of effort that's gone through the roof. Like things are notably harder than we think they are. So we need to go through a period of time where our body starts to deal with that. So that's where people don't really kind of fill the cup back up. It's like we've got this big cup. It's our, it's our recovery jug, I guess is like Ben likes to refer to it as, and that's everything that we have. And we drain that jug when we train. So this next phase of like recovery or resistance is our body trying to deal with what we just did to it. So it's like, okay, cool. Your body's like, I don't want to deal with that shit again. It's hard. And survival, our basic survival instincts show that we will meet that new baseline that we imposed on it by getting stronger, putting on more muscle, maybe decreasing body fat if we're too heavy, or whatever it is that you're trying to intend to do on your training. But to do that, we have to kind of dot the I's and cross the T's on the things outside of the gym. And then after that, it's like if we don't fill this jug up, if we don't dot our I's and cross our T's with the things outside of the gym, we go through this like chronic state of what we call like exhaustion. And the symptoms of that are things that people, deal with every day. Like we're talking about like, decreased cognition, decreased, clarity, decreased ability to make decisions. We've got, lethargy. We've got, poor recovery from your training sessions. So your DOMs stick around for longer. Like, so everyone can kind of sit there and be like, well, I felt tired. I felt this. I felt that. And if we don't address these things, which we're going to address today, we never go through this period where we kind of fully recover and get the adaptations that we want from the training. Because we just go back to the stimulus phase again.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the biggest thing that stands out is like that correlation that a lot of people just, again, don't put two and two together, that what happens in the gym and I guess like your ability to progress is going to be influenced by those outside factors.
Yeah.
So like you said, if you're not like sort of crossing your T's, dotting your I's, like you're not going to be able to fully recover and then be able to perform better, but people aren't putting those pieces of the puzzle together.
Yeah.
They don't see that. So even like, obviously we track lifestyle KPIs and stuff. And if someone's not getting stronger and all their KPIs are, red and orange and everything else in terms of food is being met, it's like, well, why are you super stressed? What's going on outside of that? And they're just like, oh, I had no idea that could influence my training performance.
Yeah.
The way I'm showing up in the gym.
Yeah. And I think like where there's another disconnect with what you just said then is like thinking about stress in general. It's like there's like stress isn't something that we can avoid. It's something that we have to mitigate. If we don't stress ourselves out, we don't have this resistance phase where we respond. And training is a stressor, so we've got to be able to kind of differentiate the types of stress that we have. And even like, regardless of like whether there's good stress and bad stress, like some bad stress we can't fucking choose to avoid. Like we can't just say, hey, I don't want that stress in my life.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to pay my mortgage this month. I don't want to do that job for work,
Yeah.
So then it's a case of like, all right, if we understand there's good stress and bad stress, but that adds to the whole stress load, we have to find ways to either, meet those demands if we can, like maybe with nutrition and rest, if we can kind of meet the stress load with those things. Or sometimes we have to like peel back on things like training and stuff and like control the stresses that we have control of to mitigate the increase in stresses of the things that we can't.
Yeah.
So training is a positive stressor, but it still creates the same physiological responses that bad stresses do. So we've got like distress, which is stress that's not desirable, let's call it. And then we've got eustress, which is like something that's creating a shift in the system, but has a positive outcome. So if we don't, even though both those things kind of have the same mechanism or they respond mechanistically the same, we still have to treat them. And because of that, we have to treat them with the same respect. So I can't sit there and be like, oh, well, I've had a bad day at work, so I'm going to throw a fucking bath bomb into the bath and like light some candles and shit to deal with the hard day I had from work. But I didn't hit my macros today and I haven't slept well, but I'm going to go to the gym and try and perform hard. It's like, it doesn't, that those things don't add up. Like we have to treat them, equally as important.
Yeah. And like we sort of joke around about the notion of self-care, but if we're thinking about what true productive self-care is, it's doing the low-hanging fruits really, really well so that you can actually recover and just feel optimal.
Yeah.
A lot of people are just settling for feeling average because that's all that they're used to.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And it's like if you look at the people, like we say this all the time, success leaves clues. And if you look at the people that, have the physique you want, they perform the way that you want to, looking at how they behave and act is a really valuable thing to do. And all those people are like, working on, managing their work-life balance to a degree. They're managing their training load, so they're, they're monitoring like how much work they do in a week. So they know how many sets they do. They know how much weight they've shifted. They eat a high protein diet. They're managing their calories. They're managing their hydration status. They don't really drink alcohol. They're doing everything they can to optimize the outcome that they want, whatever it is, like strength, fat loss, whatever. So if we know that these people who have these physiques we want or perform the way we want to behave this way, it's like it's not an accident. Like they're not just like genetic freaks that can neglect all of these things and still achieve these outcomes. So we have to find a way for people who it's not their job to be massive or to be shredded or to train or to perform a certain way, but it still sits in the top 3 to 5 values for them or priorities. So we got to draw comparisons and go, well, how can we make these things fit for you? Because if you don't get these things right, like I was talking to someone the other day, and it's like, you literally, if you fuck up your training session and you design it in a way that just creates like a ridiculous amount of muscle damage, let's say, for example, and you don't actually support it with enough protein and calories, let's just say for this situation, you actually won't achieve any outcome from that session.
Yeah.
So like you wasted your time.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
So you have like a limited amount of time on this planet, let alone a limited amount of time to spend in the gym.
Yeah.
Like,
is that how you want to spend
how the fuck like you literally just wasted your fucking time and effort, and like that just blows my mind. Like that whole concept. So if we know that even that happens, and like we're not really going to talk about like how to program training today, like we'll do that in another episode, but it's like if you don't have the programming properly, like done properly, if you don't have all of these other things done properly, you're wasting your time. Yeah. And you will never get that back.
Yeah. And I think that like you sort of spoke about the good stress, bad stress thing before. When it comes to training, like a lot of the people that we tend to work with are under the impression that more is better. Yeah. But at what point is it like, too much of anything is going to be a bad thing? Yeah. Like if we're just pushing this highly stressed individual someone who might be like, totally stressed from work or family commitments or, whatever it might be, their financial situation, they might be in poor health, whatever's actually stressing them out. If we then go and load this person up with 100 sets a week and they can't recover from it, but they're under the impression that that's what they need to do to build muscle and, get lean, strong, jacked, whatever it is, that's going against what they can actually recover from, right? So it's like, I guess understanding that too much of anything is going to be a bad thing at some point, and people just don't know where to draw back or draw the line so that they can sort of perform at a capability that is going to serve them.
Yeah, and that dose of how much that person can recover from, or we call it like a recovery profile of the person, or if we're referring to that person individually, like their recovery status, that's going to be indicative of a lot of things. Physical characteristics, strength, how long they've trained for, how much muscle mass they have, leverages, their diet, their sleep, their supplementation, all of these things. And then you've got, obviously you can tell when people are kind of like high and low responders to training as well. So all of these things influence like, how much stress someone can take from training. And then we match that with the appropriate stimulus. And that, like, we don't always get it right. It's like telling someone what their total daily energy expenditure is. It's like, I can't sit here and say like you burn 2,000 calories a day. Like I can say estimated off, this algorithm or this formula based off this kind of research that someone your size with your activity would, with your goals would have, this range of total daily energy expenditure. And it's just like the nuances of coaching come in. It's like, okay, so we manage the right variables and make the adjustments. That happens with training as well. It's like we have a hypothetical understanding of like where someone should start in terms of their training volume and their training load. And then we go, okay, let's see how you respond to this and then make adjustments. Now that amount is going to change for each person because unfortunately, people's recovery drug gets drained from a lot of different things. Now I've got 21-year-old athletes who, want to be, the biggest person and the leanest person they can. Life's pretty good for them. They live at home. They work 2 jobs to pay to be a bodybuilder. There's no intention to kind of move out just yet. They don't have to be a grown up yet. So it's like
the life.
They can, that's it. It's just like eat, sleep and train. I'll do anything, coach. So it's like, okay, well, I'm going to fucking hammer that person because they can take it. It's like, there's no real kind of other things getting in the way of, them recovering from their training sessions. But then it's like, you've got the business owner who's got 2 kids, who still really values being, like looking good naked. It's like, we still have to get the dose right for that person.
Yeah.
So that person's going to have to, take a little bit less. But the thing is, it's like, as long as you provide a good enough stimulus for the goal that you want, You just have to match the recovery and you'll still get the outcome. It's like, just because this person can do more doesn't always necessarily mean that they're going to get better outcomes than this person. Because it's like, you can only get adaptations from what you recover from.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter. It's like research coming out saying like, it's better to train in the afternoon. It's like, who cares if it's better to train in the afternoon if I can't train in the afternoon?
Yeah.
Like, what's better?
It's relevant. Yeah.
Is it like, do I stress myself the fuck out, change my whole schedule, tell you guys like, nah, I'm unavailable between 4 and 6 just to train in the afternoon? It's like, fuck that. I'd rather just get the workout done in the morning.
Cardio thing.
yeah. It's like, I'd rather just get it done when I want to get it done.
Yeah.
It's still going to be beneficial, and it's beneficial for me.
Yeah.
So that stress load that people have is going to be different, and that affects what we give them, and it affects how they respond to it.
Yeah.
And that's what good coaching is trying to marry up.
Yeah. I think a lot of, I guess, like stress management techniques should be, not even stress management, but like recovery should be inbuilt into a plan. Like that's the starting point. It's like a lot of these things can be ticked off if you have, a really well-structured plan that takes into account all of these things. And then there's an element outside of that that's like, what are you doing as an individual? Where are you taking responsibility for that? And managing your other factors that happen just in like day-to-day life. So, do you have times where you intentionally wind down? Are you staying up until midnight in front of a screen? Like, how are you living your life to reflect the plan as well?
Yeah.
And if you can like marry that up, then you're going to be in a pretty good spot.
Yeah, great. Well, that's probably a great segue. So what we've done is kind of broken up these like elements of recovery, because recovery is multifaceted. So people are going to be sitting here going, okay, so we know that stress affects this system, and we go through all these phases, but like, how do we fix this shit? Like, how do we deal with it? So we've kind of identified some key areas where you guys can fill your jugs back up to deal with the magnitude of stresses that shift your system. Make sure that we never really get into this exhaustion phase, or if we do, we kind of know how to navigate back out of them. So the first thing we're going to talk about is sleep. So we're not going to go into the weeds on sleep itself because it's pretty complicated, and there's a lot of things involved in like why we sleep, how we sleep, all of those kind of things. But in a nutshell, it's like we have a period in time where our body needs to kind of rest, to cleanse itself, repair itself, download short-term data into long-term data, refine skills, and even just like get rid of the useless shit that we've kind of exposed ourselves to day to day, so that we don't have to think about that. Like, you don't know where you parked your car 3 days ago at the supermarket because you don't have to. It's not important. So when we sleep, we go through these different phases in a sleep cycle that help those things happen. Now, I think what's more important is like, what happens when we don't sleep enough? And people were like, well, how much sleep should I get? So it's kind of like a sliding scale. So you need to sleep the most when you're the youngest. And as you get older, you need to sleep a little bit less. And that's just because of growth and development purposes mainly. But your average adult needs to sleep about 7 to 9 hours a night. Now, there's definitely differences in terms of like person to person, how much sleep they need and can handle. So you'll get those people that only need 6.5 hours and they actually are fully rested.
Like an outlier.
Yeah, 100%. And then you'll get those people that sleep fucking 9 hours and they're still, not, they don't feel very rested. So in a nutshell, we've got this kind of like range that people are going, it's an acceptable range for an adult. Most people are going to have to try and aim for about 7 to 9. If you are an active individual, you need to probably sleep a little bit longer than you should now. So if you sleep for 6 hours and you're active, you probably should sleep for about 6.5 to 7. It's just, again, when we have a period of time where we're not doing anything else, there's a lot of repair and regeneration that happens. When we train, we kind of, create a little bit more damage that needs repair and regeneration. So we just need that little bit more time. Now, in terms of reasons why or what happens when we feel underslept, it's like the typical symptoms of being overstressed. You can't like an inability to make decisions and make decisions quickly. You've got decreased kind of control over your food choices and decision making, or willpower, we'll call it. You've got a distortion in your hunger signaling. So we're not being told efficiently that we're hungry, or we're getting told that we're hungry when we're full, and we're not getting told we're full when we're eating. You've got lethargy and increased perception of effort. So those things are the main ones we're going to talk about, because all of those things affect our results in the gym. You do a set, it's harder than it should be, you're going to stop. Right? Fatigue's onsetting sooner. So the feedback going back to the system saying this is really hard. So the system's going to say, all right, let's not do this. You've got hunger distortion. And decreased willpower. All of a sudden, it's like, hey, that food that I normally walk past and don't care about, I'm going to eat that today.
Diet's hard to stick to.
Yeah. So you're going to be like, oh, there's just more opportunity of those like fuck it days.
Yeah.
And they happen too frequently. So when we kind of look at it from our results, it's like what we need to do is like train hard and get our diet in check. Like if we don't do those things, like you can't out-train a bad diet, and you can't out-train anything if you're not sleeping well, because you can't train. Well, you can't train hard. And training hard gets the best outcomes out of everything. I don't care what anyone says. It's like you train hard. I don't know someone who doesn't look like a weapon who trains hard as well. It's like they all look like weapons.
Yeah.
Right? So those things get affected when we don't sleep. If someone's interested in improving their sleep, you'd think that they would want to put a bit of time there.
Yeah.
It's just that we take advantage of the fact that like at some point our body just shuts down.
Yeah.
But that's not enough.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And again, it's just one of those things that gets sort of, what's the word? It's like people just don't understand the impacts. And like, again, it's just that disconnect between like, I feel like shit and all of a sudden I'm really hungry, but not understanding why that might be. And I think as well, like if we've got all the other stuff on lock, like you've got your nutrition down pat, you've got your training volume down pat, everything else is under control, you can then start to like identify like, yeah, I slept like shit last night, so that's why it's really hard for me to stick to my diet today. Like I know personally for myself, like if I don't sleep 8 hours, like I'm a shell of a human.
Yeah.
And sticking to my diet is the biggest fucking struggle. You would know that.
Creating a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Literally every single time I don't sleep enough, I'm like, that my diet's going to be fucked. Or I can preempt that today is going to be really, really hard, and I need to sort of approach my day in a way that I know I'm going to be successful, full well knowing that it's going to be harder than usual because I haven't slept well. So it's like, cool, I slept 6 hours unintentionally last night. I might push back my first meal so that, I've got more food later in the day when I'm going to start to be real hungry. And just like ravenous and just want to get my hands on something.
Yeah.
And just like sort of look for that next dose of energy. So again, just being aware of that is really important as well, because it changes the way that you approach that day when you know that that's happened, because from time to time it will happen.
Yeah. That's right. And I guess like the way I think about everything that we're talking about today, everything comes back to getting a good night's sleep first. Like everything that we're talking about that we're going to fix and everything, it's like you get a good night's sleep, most of the things kind of fall in alignment after that. Because I think they said nutrition's like the most important factor for health. I don't know. Like Ben said that, I think Ben mentioned it, or like he read it from somewhere. But it's like, if that's the case, sleep's more important in my opinion.
Yeah, 100%.
It's like, that is the focal point of like how we think, act, respond, make decisions, do all those things. If we don't get a good night's sleep, everything kind of falls apart. So now we need to think about, well, if my sleep is shit, how do I fix it?
Yeah.
What do I need to do to get my sleeping hygiene, we call it, or sleep behavior, more in alignment with, kind of where it needs to be to maximize the outcomes that we want. So there's a couple of things here that are more behaviors that we need to adopt. So the first one's like sleep scheduling. So it's like having like sleep and wake times. And look, you can be a little bit flexible here and kind of give people a range, but it's like I wouldn't really kind of extend that range outside of like an hour. So it's like you can sleep between 9 and 10 and you get up between 6 and 7. It's like you should do that every day.
Yeah. Yeah. And then like when you sleep in on the weekend, you feel like shit anyway, because that's not what you normally do.
Yeah, well, you're shifting your internal body clock. So remember that we are quite a habitual species, so everything's kind of regulated on kind of behavior. So if we want our inner kind of, I guess like clock, we'll call it, to recognize times for rest and times for wakefulness, we need to give it an opportunity to regulate itself and stick to a cycle. And if we distort that cycle, we don't have this behavior and these stimuli saying to our body, well, this is the time when we're supposed to be wakeful and alert and be able to make decisions and have energy to support the day. And we don't have signals saying or time and habits to say, well, we should be restful right now and be shutting down and regenerating the system. So it gets distorted. So it doesn't know when to do that. So it's kind of stuck in this middle ground where it's like you're kind of restful and you're kind of wakeful. So you feel like shit, or people are like just bouncing off the walls at 8 o'clock at night. It's pitch black.
Yeah.
It's like, this is not really kind of the time that we should be, alert.
Yeah.
We should be winding down. So that comes from regulating your sleep and having a dedicated sleep and kind of a rest and wakeful time. The next one's like creating the right environment. So just good, nice, clean environment, good temperature, like a nice bed, nice sheets, everything's nice and clean. That is really important. If it's too hot, your brain won't shut down to sleep. If it's too cold, it will do the same. It's going to try and warm you up. I think it's about 18 degrees Celsius for your room temperature, roughly, to be optimal for sleeping. And then moving into like thinking about the environment for sleeping and thinking about our bed and stuff. Like just the fucking time you spend in your bedroom too. Like
You're talking to the wrong person.
Yeah, well, I'd be very surprised at people who struggle with sleep and the amount of time they sit in their bed. Like the bed is for two reasons, in my opinion, right? Sleeping's one of them, and another one's you can kind of catch my drift of where I'm going with on that one. But it's like that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
So
I think that like the whole lockdown thing as well, for a lot of people, fucked that up.
Yeah.
Just like using one space for a variety of reasons. Speaking from experience, but I know like a lot of my clients as well.
Yeah. So think about when you go to assume a position, like and lie down. It's like, what are you telling? What signals is your body getting from being in that position and being in that environment, right? So if I don't spend any time in my bed. I sleep in it, and me and my wife, do some acrobatics in there sometimes. So when I go to bed and I lie down and I sit in a laying position with my head on my pillow, it's like that is every signal. There's no light above my head. There's no light in front of my eyeballs. That's every indication to my body it's time to sleep.
Yeah.
So it's not an accident that within 5 to 10 minutes, if there's no, if Steph's not talking to me, I'm out. I'm out like a light.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a tremendous amount of power in having that environment if you can, because I get it. Some people don't have the rest of the house to kind of live in and they're confined to their bedroom. But it's like, if you can do it, it's like, try not to live in your bed.
Yeah.
Then we start to think about like, how do we reinforce good, sleep, wakefulness and restfulness. So there's a really good kind of data that shows that like when we eat can reinforce kind of when we need energy and when we should kind of peel back on the nutrients and energy. And that's trying to reinforce the fact that we don't really need a supply at the time. So it's going to start to kick off restfulness. So it's called chrononutrition. So it's suggesting that what do they say? Like eat like a king in the morning and eat like a pauper in the evening or something like that. So it's like that whole kind of concept. It's like, if I have a big meal at the start of the day, it's like, boom, we have this huge supply of energy, which is going to support mental clarity and wakefulness, because we are about to continue, start the day. And that's what we need. If you're having big meals at nighttime, you're kind of sending the wrong message. Look, I'm not saying it's like live and die by in terms of like a principle or a method. But it does make a lot of sense when we think about like how we kind of approach a wake or restful state. It's like supplying yourself with a ridiculous amount of energy at that time might not be the best for some people.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's also super individual. Like you just get those people that can have a big meal and they're like out like that, puts them straight to sleep.
Definitely.
And then you've got those people that have a big meal and they're just wired for hours.
Yeah, it's definitely like individual, and I have had that with a lot of clients that I work with. I think if you were someone who's really struggling with everything overall,
it's
like
worth
put it
looking
all
at.
together.
Yeah.
And then you just peel back the things that aren't, because like not everyone's not going to have to do all of these.
Yeah.
They're going to have to do some of them, and then if you're still not getting to where you need to be, you probably need to do more of them. So it's definitely a good tool to exercise with some people, even the type of food too. Like I had a client who was just like, fucking jacked up and wired at like all hours of the morning. And I was like, what were you eating the last meal before bed? And it was like red meat, potatoes and veggies. And I said, is there a meal throughout the day that you eat and you kind of feel a little bit tired after it? Which is a really good kind of thing to ask yourselves too, because food most of the time should make you feel energized, but it's okay for food to make you feel sleepy. So we swapped those meals, and that was the fix.
Yeah,
that was the only thing we needed, is just knowing what food can do for us, and when to use it is another useful strategy.
Even the time, like I had a client who was like, I can't fall asleep. And I was like, what time are you training? And he's like, 7. What time are you having dinner? 8:39. And I was like, cool, train earlier, eat earlier, let's see how you go. And he was like, changed it, all good. Yeah.
Well, think about like the time that it's going to take to come down from, training, and then processing a meal and stuff. It's like your body can't be in a restful state to do those things. So everything kind of extends itself out. And then I guess leading on to another thing to manage, which we're all very poor at, which is what some people do before they train, is they consume caffeine. So caffeine and other stimulants like nicotine. So if you smoke as well, it's the same principle. It's like these things create energy and alertness through altering brain chemistry, essentially. So when we dose them is super important. Like if we aren't being mindful of when we dose those things, they have an amount of time to pass through the system completely, and it's a lot longer than people think. So those things can still be present and abundant in the bloodstream.
Yeah, what is that time? Like, is there any...
Caffeine's, the half-life is 7 hours.
Yeah.
7 hours? 7.5 hours? So that's half-life. So it's
yeah.
half the amount. So if I take, like what's a double shot is probably 160 milligrams of caffeine. So I have one of those in the morning. Let's say we have it at 7. So by 2 o'clock, there's 80 milligrams left of that first one. Let's say we have another coffee. This time it's a single shot. So then we go at that time, because everyone has one about, early in the morning, mid-morning, or say mid-afternoon. So then we go back to 160 milligrams. Because we've just kind of digested half of that. Some people have more than 2 coffees a day. Let's say I go to the gym then at 4 o'clock and I have a pre-workout and we double scoop everything. So that then becomes, say, 200 milligrams. So we've kind of digested the other half, or half of the half that we had in the morning, but we've still got the 80 milligrams. Then we've got the 200. So we've probably got like 300, maybe 400 milligrams of caffeine floating around the system. And then it gets to like 8 o'clock at night and people wonder why they're sitting on their phone playing fucking Candy Crush and shit. And they can't fucking concentrate. And it's like, not only have you just jacked yourself up and it hasn't exited the system, you've then had to process all the other shit that's happened over the day. And then it's like you've got poor nutrition, poor sleeping habits. So all of these things add up to this like ball of shit that we can't use one thing to break the cycle. Like we have to use a lot of things. So we just have to be very mindful. So just as a general rule of thumb for most people, it's about 2 o'clock that you wouldn't want to consume caffeine afterwards. Some people have enzymes in their liver abundant enough to digest caffeine at a faster rate than others. So it is individual, but you want to, if you're struggling with your sleeping, you still want to kind of, again, put these dominoes in a row just to make sure you kind of dotting the I's and crossing the T's. When we then move to, or think about the other things that like affect or reinforce sleep habits, we can talk about this stuff for fucking ages. So we've talked about environment, we've talked about sleep-wake cycles, talked about nutrition, we've talked about caffeine timing. I I think I had one more. I can't really remember it at the moment. Like, is there anything else that you can think of that reinforces like sleeping habits for people?
I don't know if it sort of falls into the sleep-wake cycle, but just that like exposure to sunlight as well.
Yeah, so that bang. So that's the one. So darkness and light. So understanding the relationship between darkness and light. So when the lights are when the sun is out, we're supposed to be awake. You know, if we actually didn't have any lights and we just went back off the day-night cycle of the sun and when it's gone and the moon, we would be awake during the day and asleep at nighttime. And we actually would sleep for longer than we do now because we're more regulated by darkness, and there's research to support that. They'd had like people like slept in a cave and shit, and they actually worked out like how long they could sleep for and be awake for, and they were asleep for fucking ages.
Fuck.
But anyway, it's going off topic. So exposure to light, especially over the head, sends the signal to the brain that we should be awake, because the degree of light that's beaming through the eye at the angle that it is would suggest that we need to be alert and awake and stuff. So this is where like being mindful of that at nighttime. Understand we're not going to walk around with the lights off. So it's like use a lamp, make sure it's a different color, make sure it's not above your eyeball. It's kind of a good thing because it's sending the right messages. When we think about light exposure through screens and stuff, it's like the blue and the green light do kind of affect the signaling in the brain to start to shut the system down to support a restful state. So melatonin production can get affected because of that degree of light and the amount of it. So the degree going in and the actual amount that's going in as well. So we can mitigate that by using things like night mode and stuff like that. But at some point, we still have to kind of cease the screens.
Yeah.
So that'll generally be about an hour to 2 hours before bedtime. But yeah, other than that, it's like do those things and it's like get the sleep right. And it's like the rest of the things fall into place. So when we look at like the next thing, it's like we talk about nutrition. It's like nutrition becomes much easier. It's like your coach sets your diet up, or you guys set your diet up to support energy to supply for training performance and life. Protein for recovery.
Yeah.
I think we're done there. Yeah. It's like micronutrients to support.
Don't eat like an asshole.
Yeah, it's like, and then just have enough nutrients in your diet to support all the functions that micronutrients and antioxidants and minerals and those things support. And it's like, cool, dotting the I's, crossing the T's, we're done there.
Yeah.
Then the next thing is hydration status. It's like the first sign of dehydration is usually lethargy. So it's like, I'm tired. How much water have I had today? Or
I'm really hungry.
Yeah.
Have a glass of water.
It's like my blood sugar's dropping. What is it? Or do I just need a glass of water?
Just thirsty.
Yeah. Or do I need to do the supermodel diet and just have ice cubes and water? So then we've got hydration status. It's like, again, 65% of the system's water, I think. So we perspire through sleep. We perspire through training. We perspire through life. So it's like we're evaporating fluid. That needs to be replaced. Electrolytes do too, but let's just not go there. So it's like we have the right diet. We drink enough water or fluid, because fluid's like, you drink tea, you drink coffee, you drink a bit of this and that. It's like it's got all in there. It's got water in there at some point. It's going to hydrate you. Just like have some water as well. Yeah. So that's generally 2 to 3 liters a day as an adult. About 120 to 150 mils of water or fluid, every 15 minutes of exercise, I think. Something along those lines. 600 mils to a liter when you train. Yeah. It's like, easy. Let's just make it easy for the people, yeah? Anything else that you can think of? We've got nutrition. We spoke about water. We spoke about sleep.
No, I think that's pretty much it in terms of like everything that encompasses recovery and like stress management. To sort of like maximize results or like get the most out of yourself. I guess
the alcohol we have to probably talk about. So alcohol's a normal kind of thing that we consume. I think that the dose starts to vary. It's like if someone's not really that interested in their results, they drink lots of alcohol. If someone's committed to their results, they'll rein things in and drink less of it. The less alcohol you can drink, the better. If you're trying to maximize performance and your results, like the less you drink, the better results you're going to get. I've never seen something outside of alcohol kind of destroy people's gains. Yeah. And it's just, we don't sleep well. Again, we make poor choices. Yeah. We have poor cognition and performance. So it's like, if you want to consume something that affects you like sleep does, just drink.
Yeah, it's
alcohol.
like that.
Yeah.
The impacts of sleep in
in a bottle.
Yeah.
It's like drink this and you'll have the same effects, and then don't sleep well
like
at the
shit
same
as
time.
well, and wonder why you're not getting
So it's
results.
like, imagine what your recovery jug's like if you drank alcohol regularly and you slept like shit. Like, you just be so fucked. So that I think that needs to be addressed. Yeah, there's time and a place, but more people are invested in, kind of their results will drink less overall. In my opinion, or they'll go through phases where they just like rein it in.
Yeah, so you just sort of like fall into the lifestyle, and I guess like the way that you phase things anyway. Yeah.
This is a time and a place. Like, you might go through phases where you're a little bit more social, and it's like, okay, so you want to achieve some really good fucking extraordinary results. Some shit's got to go. Like, there's a price to pay for everything. We just have to be willing to, sacrifice or pay that price to achieve some things. So sometimes when we want to achieve extraordinary shit, the social life takes a little bit of a hit, and most of the time the drinking kind of has to stop or lower significantly. And then the last one's just like, mental fatigue, like dealing with just like life in general. And it's just like ways to kind of, manage those things. Like, if you run your own business or you got a million things to do, it's just like being really good at like, knowing what you have to do and disconnecting from it. We talk about journaling, we talk about to-do lists. We talk about having someone or a support network to kind of, to talk to help you navigate through things like that. So those things do still help, because it's like, we still have this mental fatigue that kind of comes with, or this mental stress that comes, that affects our cognition. It affects our ability to perform. It affects our ability to make decisions. So we need to make sure that we do address that. And those things get worse if we don't eat well, we don't sleep well, we drink too much alcohol. So I guess like the picture that we're painting here today, guys, is these things are multifaceted and they kind of cross over and are interlinked. So if we start with one area, it can really start to affect the other things. And the lowest hanging fruit, in my opinion, is your sleep and your hydration status.
Yeah, everything just compounds. Like, you can see how much everything can compound either way, like upward spiral, downward spiral, depending
100%.
on the way that you're approaching this stuff. So hopefully by now you guys you have a really good starting place, I guess.
Yeah.
To like audit your current lifestyle and what you're doing at the moment. And again, like, it's just low hanging fruit. Like, a lot of this stuff, if it's not inbuilt into your plan right now, it should be.
Yeah.
And you need to start there. Because if you don't have that, then addressing sort of the other factors, you're not going to get the most bang for your buck. It's like, do the things inbuilt in your plan first, and then look at where you can fine tune things and sort of turn the dials up and down as you need to.
Yeah, this is like best bang for buck, lower hanging fruit. Like you said, like there's going to be, once we have these in, all of this stuff kind of on lock, we can start to look at like other ways to kind of optimize things. Like, especially for some people, they're going to want, like just like extraordinary outcomes. So that's just like, extraordinary. It's like above the pile, above the norm. So we're going to have to dive a little bit deeper and do some things, or like the flexibility in the rope kind of gets a bit tighter. But if someone doesn't have the stuff that we spoke about today, kind of, in alignment, then that's the first place we're going to go. We're not going to talk about supplementation. We're not going to talk about, other strategies that we can use, because it's like people are going to go for those because they think it's the easiest place to go.
Yeah.
But it's like supplementation and things like that are only effective if you've got all those other things
get this
kind of working
first.
Yeah, because it's just like, it's going to supplement all of these other good behaviors.
Yeah.
But it's like a supplement isn't going to put a big pile of
Band-Aid.
It's just like, it's not a big enough Band-Aid to work across all of those areas.
Yeah, 100%.
So getting those right. And then the last one's just time. So like, recovery is in a nutshell a period of time that we need to resupply energy, regenerate tissue, recover, repair and maintain the system. And that can be acute and chronic. So acute is like in between a set, for example, or in between an exercise, even maybe in between a session. And then you've got chronic, which is like in between a mesocycle, or, training from week to week or something like that. So sometimes people can have all of these ducks in a row, and time is the thing that they need more of. So we need to then maybe think about having an extra day off, or, something along those lines. So time is the thing that people miss the most outside of those others. Like, they won't really want to have more time not training.
Yeah, is that like chucking a deload in or something like that?
Yeah, it's chucking a deload in. Sometimes it's just an extra day off training.
Yeah.
some of the people that I've mentored with, like when we talk about like progressive overload and stuff, and how that is such an important kind of element, it's like once you kind of hit a point where that person's not progressing, like the theory is, or sorry, some people's opinion is, the only thing that's going to fix that is just having more time.
Yeah.
So adding in another set to try and, create a greater magnitude of stimulus, for example, rather than kind of increasing the actual stimulus from the acute set, is what people do to try and change things. But that doesn't actually make the person lift more weight, just, like weight on the bar. It just makes them lift more volume load.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to get better at that movement, which would assume that you would want to lift more reps or weight, traditionally, like we're talking about traditional progressive overload, not I got more range of motion in my squat today. Time is the thing that's going to solve that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's like the training equivalent of a diet break.
Yeah. Well, that's it. It's like this system just needs more time to go through that recovery phase.
Yeah.
It just needs time to go through that adaptation phase. So we haven't given it enough. So for it to do that, we have to just wait. So this is where the nuance of coaching comes in. But that's kind of pretty much everything. Like we put it on lock. It's like, you got to live, act, and behave in a specific way. You've got to, there's things to do inside the gym. There's a lot of things to do outside of the gym. In the gym, stuff's easy.
Is it? Yeah.
Like, you got to work hard.
Yeah.
Work hard and follow your plan.
Yeah.
And try and be better every week. But to be better,
you got to do all this stuff.
there's all this other stuff that happens. It's like, you're not just going to get stronger, like just
By
because
accident.
you did the movements. Like a lot of people will get stronger because they'll get better at the skill of lifting.
Yeah.
But you're not actually your muscles aren't getting bigger. Your brain's not getting better at producing force. Your brain's getting better at controlling your body to lift the weight. So there's like fake progress, which I think happens in the first 2 to 3 weeks of everyone's program. And then there's actual fucking progress, which is when people change their program because it gets hard.
True. Very true.
I can talk about this all day.
Yeah.
Anything to add?
Yeah. No,
Anything else?
I think that's a really good starting spot for a lot of people to, I guess, just like, audit what they're currently doing. If it's not working out for you at the moment, like it's a really good place to start.
Yeah.
And just start, like, no one's saying go and fucking change everything tomorrow, but start to consider these things because eventually it's going to wear you down if you don't.
Yeah, I think some take homes for the listeners, like we've got these areas, and what I would do is probably just rank yourself 1 to 10 on kind of like what you think you sit at, like 10 being optimal and 1 being poor, sleep, diet, mental fatigue, those kind of things. And it's like, okay, so which one's the lowest scoring, or which one do you feel would give you the best bang for buck? If you don't say sleep, then you didn't
Start
listen.
again.
Listen to the conversation again.
Go back to the start of the episode.
And then it's like work back on those. It's like pick one thing and work on it.
Yeah.
It's like pick one. Don't pick 400 things. Just pick one, get it on lock. In 4 weeks' time, you'll have 4 things on lock. In my opinion, everything else will fall in suit once you get your sleep in check anyway. Your sleep and your diet, really, and your hydration status. Like, get those 3 things on lock. I think everything else falls into alignment. Or your ability to deal with the rest of the stresses will start to become greater because those things are being supported.
Yeah.
Like, they support the organism the most. Sleep, nutrition, and hydration status. So, yeah, like that's probably the best take home. And I guess it's like a really cheesy segue. That's really part of one of the major components of like our Be Bulletproof program, which we've been working on meticulously. Like we go into the weeds on this stuff to give you guys empowerment to make better decisions and to know why, and to just have a better understanding of all the moving parts so that you guys can just like take control of your training, set goals, achieve them, and set new ones, and just have the body that you want. That performs the way you want it to.
Literally bulletproof your outcomes. So we start on the 12th of July.
Yeah.
So that's a week once this comes out. Yeah, pretty much a week from when this comes out on Friday.
Yep.
So if you guys are interested, head to the STCfit Instagram. You can apply through the link in the bio there, or you can just shoot us a DM. I think that's a pretty good spot to leave it. So
yep.
Yeah.
If you guys are listening to this and you're maybe a coach as well, and want some information on like how to run your business as a fitness business owner, check out at STCfit Learning. Make sure you guys are obviously following it at STCfit as well. If you guys want to follow myself, at JasonGalia _STC, If you want to follow Nat
Jurek, STCfit.
And then, if you guys are make sure you guys following us on YouTube as well. And if you haven't taken the scorecards, jump on stcfit.com, take the scorecard there. Or if you're a business owner looking to, improve your business, go on to stcfitlearning.com and take our business scorecard as well.
We will see you next week.
All right. Thanks, guys. That was a good chat.